Well, hi everyone. Thank you for bearing with us while we get all our technical issues together. We're here at BG Gallery. Actually, we're in our space behind BG Gallery where we host our BG After Hours. Thank you guys for following us. Thank you for tuning in. Today we have Ronald Wright, one of our artists that we featured in the Melanin Deluxe show. And Ronnie is with us through Zoom from Tokyo. And we're so excited to talk to him today. One reason being because he's a part of the show. Another reason is because we are doing this. We did the Melanin Deluxe show in honor of Black History Month. And a lot of the work that Ronnie does speaks to Black history. It speaks to Black issues. It speaks to the political climate. It speaks to a lot of the emotions and the issues that affect all of us, but specifically Blacks. And so we are very excited to talk to him about his new book called Crushed Blacks, which we're going to get more into later. But first, I just want Ronnie to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his journey from growing up in South Carolina to going to an art school in Massachusetts and now being a commercially successful artist in Asia. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Hey, Andre, thank you for inviting me.
Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I think
one of the things was like
North Carolina. Grew up a lot in
the
Is that from his IG?
Yeah.
Can you turn on the mic in your IG live, Ronnie?
Let's see.
Turn on.
Not off, but turn down.
Let's see.
It's just it's close to the other.
Is that better?
Is that better?
Say something else.
Okay.
Is that better? I don't know.
It's a little better. Okay, just let's see how it goes.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, originally from North Carolina, from a small area called Town or Tobaccoville, and I think one of the things that happened was
We're a
tight-knit family, so we were able to be introduced to the arts really early. Most of ours, I think my sister and brother played musical instruments. I think we all had to play musical instruments at one point. And I would say maybe like last year of high school,
community college taking photography courses. And after internship at the Smithsonian, I realized that maybe it was
go to art school.
And
just by I guess by chance, I just went to Oxford College of Art in Massachusetts.
after
After
getting
getting there, it was kind of a new experience coming from the South, moving to the North, which is completely different lifestyle, I guess. It was pretty interesting. Coming from North Carolina, moving to Massachusetts, weather, people, food, everything's a bit different. But it helped me develop a way of working that put probably more in touch with my roots as an African American artist. So one of the things I recall was once I
moved to Massachusetts, I was kind
of struggling with photography a little bit. I was already doing some landscape work, but I kind of dropped it to the side for a while and started moving into more sculptural and more material-based art. And one of the materials I started using a lot was hair grease.
So I
was maybe a couple of gallons of hair grease, like pomade. And for the final show, I think I made a 12-foot or 14-foot
by
12-inch frame that was filled with hair grease and had a few words written inside in hair grease.
And the
response was pretty good, so I felt like I was on the right path of making more conceptual-based work than traditional landscape photography. And after a while of living in Massachusetts and moving around a little bit more, when I let's see, when I think maybe between that point and going to graduate school in Chicago, I tried to start mixing photography and more sculptural concepts together. And in doing so, I began to question photography as a whole, not as a documentary, but as an object itself. So one of the things I started looking at was, again, going back and looking at kind of landscape and looking at older buildings
and
seeing how um,
it's
history had begun to like reshape itself over a period of time, and how some of these films were not necessarily that way, but
was still
part of the community.
If that
makes any sense or not.
No, it does. It definitely does. Would you say your concern in photography comes from sort of wanting to document the things that you grew up seeing, and the things that matter to you in this, in the space where you were raised?
Oh, completely. I think that part of it was like looking at how let's see. What's the best way to say it? Well, our family is pretty old in a sense. Like, we kind of go back a long way. So,
we're always in touch
with North Carolina roots. So I remember one time actually my wife was driving, taking photographs of former black-owned schools. And yeah, we're part of North Carolina. But we were driving around and found an old school called Brown Elementary School. It was a black-only school in Stokes, Surrey County, North Carolina, and it was completely decorated on the court. And one of the guys, or a random person, kind of pulled up and was like, what are you doing? What are you taking a picture of? So I was taking a picture of this building, and I said, "Oh, you're from around here?" And I said, "Well, I used to be, I'm from like the county over." And I remember I said like my mom's maiden name. And he's like, oh, I know those people. Oh, he's like, okay, so it's fine. It wasn't like any like a confrontation, but you can tell it's an awkward moment. Like when you see someone outside with a tripod and a 4x5 camera in a really rural area who happens to be black, and his wife is Asian. It's kind of like, what are you doing here? It's kind of weird. But by just saying like my mother's maiden name, I think people kind of knew that our family had been met her for a really long time. And so it's like, oh yeah, those, I know those guys, those people. And it's like, oh yeah, if you need help, let me know, and I can maybe direct you to other places.
Oh, so he was actually supportive of you.
It's kind of cool in that way.
Nice. So, I guess for me, and I guess for the viewers, I wanted to try to inform them on what's a documentary photograph versus a stage photograph, because I feel like you're doing more so documentary work, but it's also stage photography. So do they combine, or are they two different genres, or can you sort of elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, I think that with documentary photography, it comes down with like for the Foreign Black Schools project and the used cars for sales. They're slightly different, but the goal was the same. One was just kind of like to make an archive of two type of things that people desire. One was like the used cars in a sense where like it's something that you want, you believe you need, but you only can buy it new, so your design kind of shifts. The other was the school buildings and the history that comes with it and them being forgotten. So one is kind of staged as like kind of like just looking in a used car magazine and finding a location and going and taking a picture of it. It's like, that's not right. Maybe I'll come back the next day and look at the light. So it's like waiting for that particular moment, going back over and over again until you find the light to shoot that car. And sometimes that transfers to the school buildings and well, but most time for the school buildings, it's just kind of drive, go, look, find, take a picture, and leave. It wasn't as much as like going back and forth to find the right time, the right light to like kind of set up the situation with the used car images. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I think that the approach to like staging and documentary is more or less like kind of, for the staging part, it's like how you like create more distance when you view it as subject itself. Whereas for the documentary work, it's like trying to embrace the subject as it is and like realizing that this is like you want to make this history or archive tangible to others.
Okay. So is this a part of this distinct aesthetic development? How do you go about sort of developing an aesthetic that really speaks to exactly what you want to convey in these photos?
So I think that part of it is just like
photography
photography for me is like a big cycle. So at some point you have to be very serious and very technical at it, and at other times you have to kind of throw everything out the window
and
just start back over. So going from shooting the cars was kind of like, I don't really care about the cars per se. I just care about the concept and desire. But
but then the
reaction to those images sometimes like, oh, okay, I get it, I understand what you're trying to do, but where are you in the images? As African American, I'm talking about desire. So desire is more or less doesn't necessarily transcend race, but it does can go to different areas. So to kind of get back in touch with like maybe like physicality of photography in a sense, with like looking at the school buildings and putting myself in that landscape of space. So in photography, you can be behind a camera and of course in front of it. And in documentary photography, you can try to expose a particular story that hasn't been covered or discussed as much. But it's kind of, it's kind of tough. I'm not quite clear myself sometimes, to be honest.
And that's okay. I just, I'm interested. I really like the works. When honestly, I curated the show, as you know, with Sung-Hee and Courtney, and Sung-Hee had presented me the photos, and I was really, I found it to be really compelling, and I was really interested in, there's this really unique sort of like empathy that comes across in the photos, and there's a stillness, and there's also this nostalgic feeling. I mean, I'm from the South as well, so I think that personally for me, it may have, like struck a chord just because like there was something nostalgic about it. And also, anyone who's grown up below the Mason-Dixon lines, we know, about segregation and those things a little bit more because it's still sort of prevalent in those areas, even though it's, it's not happening now. But, there's still a rippling effect of what did happen. And so one of the questions I have is, in what ways do you sort of convey realism in your work, and what ways do you intend to?
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
In what ways do you convey realism in your work, or what ways do you intend to?
Well, I think that especially for the school system or looking at the school buildings, it was really important to kind of again get back in touch with like history, how African American history is somewhat hidden, and the problem with that is that it's almost like the landmarks right there in front of us, and the buildings are still there in front of us, but the names have changed. So it's almost like not being whitewashed, but like the reality has been like kind of shifted or morphed into something else that we ourselves can't see. And not because it's not there, it's because they just been slightly changed. So I feel like, when it comes to photographic realism, or like how to like create empathy in a photograph, the first is find the story. Don't change the story, but give people room to like understand why you're documenting it, and let them find out what's unique about it and why it has not been told before. And I think that for the school buildings or for some of the older houses, like what is the history of those older houses? It's like that. And North Carolina or South Carolina, I think they're really old Southern homes. And I remember growing up watching a lot of Bob Vila. And it's always interesting. You see like these really great like New England homes and stuff, and they always kind of like go from taking this house that's already had some type of historical value in a sense, and like making it more than what it was, or taking it back in time. But it wasn't until recently that you start seeing that happen to like former houses in the South that are owned by blacks, and I think in North Carolina, it's one or two houses that are like now designated as like homes that were owned by free slaves, but they finally restored it to that type of like Bob Vila style again. And I think that's great that we can do that, and that people can do that and take that energy and effort to like reclaim that history and put it to the forefront.
So I think
So I
that's
think
part.
that's part of the thing that I like looking at or taking pictures of in photography. Like these are sites that we've forgotten about. How do we like get people to re-engage with these sites and move forward from that?
And it's not an easy job because in today's world there's so much access to viewership. We've got like Pinterest, we've got Instagram, we've got Facebook. Everyone has an iPhone, everyone has a camera. So how do you capture these images that arouse beyond just this instant gratification, or how how would you tell a younger photographer to sort of like cross the line from sort of just taking a photo to making a photo that really speaks to an idea or an issue?
I think it's about the editing. I mean,
when you get to
the site or get to a place or location, you just take as many photographs as you can over and over again.
sometimes
2 days, 3 days, or whatever, and then go back and start cutting down and editing. And it could be something else, the light in some cases, or just some type of weird angle that just kind of like really conveys it. And I think that one of the things I was trying to figure out how to do, look at to the images, is go back and look at Philip and Bernard Bescher photographs, like this type of like not neutral, but close to neutral, like German aesthetic to photography. And I think that in some cases that approach gives the viewer more room to actually open the door and look at the photographs as something that's theirs, not as the artist will make it. So trying to make things as deadpan as possible can, open the door for a lot of viewers.
And I think that's exactly what you did, because I didn't notice why. There was something really sort of stunning about your photos versus if I can get on Instagram or I can get on the internet and I can find many photos, of certain sites or certain, and they were taken in certain time periods, but there was a certain way that you were able to convey that through these photos. So I do commend you for that. It's really impressive, actually. I want to start to talk about your book. You have a book called Crush Blacks, which we have here. You can actually pick it up at the BG Gallery if you like a copy. But one of the things that as I read the book, and I just read it maybe 2 nights ago, so it's still fresh in my system, I felt it to be a very emotional, reflective body of work. And for me, sort of falls in line with these sort of psychological bondages we have just as Black men, especially Black men from the South. I would like you to expound on what you want to convey with this book and what you want people to take away from it.
Well, I
think that when
I was working
with Colin Stearns on the book, part of it was like, how do you take these kind of disparate images? One is text-based and one is these landscape images, and not landscape in the traditional sense, but take these what are now landscape images and create like a narrative about ownership of space, ownership of land, ownership of language, and how language is defined. So in many of the text-based works, you can see that the text begins to dissipate or like grow. It's a combination of both, which comes out of the technique to make the images. And for the landscape-based images, those images come from a botanical study of the American West in the 1910s, I think 1912s, something like that. And what I was interested in is how this, these type of what were like deadpan images of like the American West, were spaces that most African Americans or Blacks didn't own, and how this like survey photographer was going out and just basically defining the landscape for botanical research, for mineral researchers, and probably even gold at the same time too. But I thought it was interesting that this person had the ability to move across space freely, and how that is still difficult for most African Americans to do. You're always aware of yourself in space. So what can you do to kind of break that space apart? And that's just to become more prevalent in that space. Not sitting in the background, but being in the foreground, taking ownership and looking at the space as your space.
I like that a lot.
So I think that's what I learned more about being here in Japan is that,
of course, most
people maybe think, well,
I would say go back
to New York too.
So when I live in
New York, a lot of times people think I'm Spanish or treatment. That's fine. Then when I moved here, a lot of people know I was from India, which is also kind of fun.
But then
But
we
then when you explain, like, oh no, it's like, I'm just like
a red
a red bone or a yellow black or whatever, as a joke. That
so
you're just simply American.
And
living here, it's like I am just simply American. There's no hyphen anymore. But of course, I take the hyphen back when I'm back to the States, but I think that type of sense of just being purely American in a sense that, yeah, I do own space in America. I am an African American, but I own the space because I'm simply American in that sense. So it's kind of hard to explain, like really linearly, but I think that the more I've lived here, the more American I feel versus like a slashing. Of course, I'm African American. There's no question about that. But at the same time, too, the conflict is why do other Americans think that we're half of American? Why do we have to have that hyphen? So that's kind of the way I see the landscape. It's like I want to break that landscape apart and be in it and own it as simply American and African American that's proud of that at the same time too, of being an American.
Right. So did that landscape shift at all during this political climate? Just from the resurgence of sort of like Black Power and activism. Did you see any sort of the translation of your Blackness in Tokyo shift at all during that time period or during this time period?
Oh no. I think it's always been the same. I think that when I did like large scale landscape stuff, the same question came up. It's like, where are you at in the photograph? Where are you at in the landscape? And when I think when you do that, when you take pictures of like most things, people always are surprised that blackness can exist in that space. So you're always aware of it. And I think that getting close to like 50 now, it's like maybe the way that younger generation today like use social media and use other tools to convey that even better than my generation. I think it's like crazy. I think it's amazing. So I think it's always part of work. I think that in my family, I think that we've always been like politically aware. Coming from North Carolina again, it's like the first time I voted, I was able to vote when I was 18, of course, but it was Jesse Helms versus Gant. And Gant was like the first African American to run for a significant seat in North Carolina politics. And I remember my dad was like, you have to vote for who? You got to vote for Gant. It's like, why? Because it's against Jesse Helms. And if anyone knows about North Carolina politics or politics in general, Jesse Helms is like one of the worst. Like a better words.
Which party was he with?
The Republican Party. Jesse Helms is famous because he was the main guy, not main, but he was a big, he really disliked Robert McClure. And he really wanted to defund the arts. And this is what, like 87, 86, 1986, 87. Now, the guy was whatever. So when Harry Gant, man, he was an African American Democrat. And it was, I remember voting for him, and I remember like, wow, this is like maybe it happened. Maybe you can beat Jesse Helms. But at the end of the day, he didn't, and Jesse Helms just kept being who he was. I think we've always been aware of politics, and there's no way you can escape politics as African American. Escape, it doesn't turn on or off like a light switch. That's a different sense of privilege for other people. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. My next question, I want to get back to Crushed Blacks, just because I think it's a really compelling body of work. And I want to know, as someone who's published a book, how do you consider images, that you publish in a book versus images that you're going to have in a gallery or a museum? How do you differentiate in what, or just expound on that for us?
I think the book format is actually much more difficult than the gallery format because in that gallery space, there's room for the viewer to like kind of like go in and out and figure out what the narrative is on. In a book, you have to completely like form a narrative.
on the
from
front
the
page.
front page of those page. And I think that's really difficult. I mean, I think that the
Guy
guy at the Melanin
book.
Books was really good at like trying to figure out how to create like a clear narrative that was not too like overhead or anything. So we went back and forth and talked a lot, shared a lot of PDFs, and he did a really good job of like trying to sort through a bunch of images and pull it together. But the gallery space is probably better for me, I guess, in a sense, because it's just like, there's like more breathing room.
Got it. Another thing I found interesting, just looking at your resume and the things that you've done, you've been a part of photography festivals, which I've never been to a photography festival. Can you tell us what that's like and what's that environment done for you?
I think that's the only way you can like kind of get through this stuff is like being in that situation, being in that area. It just gives you a lot of room to think about photography, 100% of the time. So and also approach photography differently. So right. I'm not quite sure I completely understand that question, to be honest.
Well, I guess I'm interested in how a photography festival, is it kind of like a film festival? Is it like a usual art festival? Is it all work based in photography? Or do you have multiple disciplinary artists? What's the space like?
Well, the space is kind of like, everything and anything in a sense. And not anything in a negative context, but I think you see this full range. You see the full diversity of photography as a medium in itself. And I think that you go from things that are really abstract that you may not care for, or you do care for, or you see for things that like really hardcore documentary, like long-term 5 to 10-year projects. So you're in the same space and talking to these other photographers, you start seeing that there's a lot of things that are connected that transcend borders. And I think that's what was really helpful about going to a lot of the photo festivals. Some things are like, okay. I like that. I get that. And some are like, wow, that's like, breaks your brain a little bit.
Okay. And so it would be mostly conceptual photography, I guess?
No, not at all.
Oh,
it's the whole range. I mean, again, the complete range of, from landscape, portrait, everything. I mean, I think it's just like the approach was completely different. Some things are very standardized, and some things are completely, what is this there's a guy named Arthur Oak, and it was really funny because like he was one of the people who brought in like real huge plants from China in 2018, and I mean they were huge. I mean there was nothing like it there, and I think he shows in the States, but the work is amazing, and I think that most of the people like why would you print black and white silver prints this large? I mean the scale was just incredible. But the work was also equally beautiful as well. So, I mean, I think that you see everything. And the festivals are really good. I think Martin Parr was a really popular British photographer who is almost completely like legendary in a sense. And so you just see a whole range of different photography. Maria Deane, who did some really good 3D work. Not 3D, but Maria Deane is a photographer based in Philadelphia, and she did a series based on the Philippines. She's Filipino American, and one thing she did was she sampled images from different resources and began to overlay them with these really like amazing collages, but not in the same type of sense that you would think, but they're really beautiful.
Okay, nice.
And so, you just see everything. The festival was the best way to see work.
I want to check that one for sure. I mean, I didn't even know I don't think I knew they existed, but that's really interesting. So, in relation to the current political climate, do you ever feel pressure to respond to that in your work?
I'm sorry, what was it?
Do you ever feel pressure to respond to the political climate in your work?
No,
as an artist?
no, not at all.
No. I think that it's like
Politics
are in everybody in everybody of my work. I think politics there. How overt it is just depending on what how the viewer perceives it to be. I think that politics are
good or
good or
bad.
bad have always been part of the work. So, I think that with the crushed blacks concept was like, taking like a technical term for digital imagery, like crushed blacks with like, blacks that are just, there's no detail, there's no information in it. And then trying to change that into like some other like narrative was like the concept. So, that was the beginning of the concept of making that book, or that series of work.
So
I think that
yeah,
sometimes it's more overt and sometimes it's really low key. So I think it doesn't matter. I don't think you can avoid politics in art, to be honest. So.
You avoid politics?
no, I don't.
No, I don't avoid. I don't think you can avoid.
You don't think you can avoid?
So my current series of work I'm working on now is like blank pages, like photographs of blank pages from books. But all the books are like historical books about works of expansion through the American landscape. And a lot of it's like slave owner books and stuff like that. So I think that while it looks like a blank page with some like stains or mold on it, that the book itself, when you see the title of the image, it becomes clear that what's about the hidden history of American space. So I think that you can't avoid politics in imagery.
I agree with that. And I thank you so much. You've shared so much, and I've learned so much from you, and I think that I still have a lot to learn from you. One of the questions that I have, as we're going to start to close this out, is I would like to know, what do you consider a conceptual artist? Is there, maybe, a way that you can convey and tell our viewers what you consider a conceptual artist?
Yeah, what is conceptual artist? I think that for a conceptual artist, maybe it's a crutch in a sense, but I think that part of it is like create like a body of work that comes from just your interaction with text or reading or movies or everyday culture, which is slightly different than being maybe like a real documentary photographer in a sense. But it's tricky because maybe for me as a conceptual artist is looking at the history of photography, looking at the techniques within photography, and trying to re-question both the material as photograph or the technology that makes a photograph, and then whether how to break it or how to expand on that technology to make a new image. So I think for me, that's how I maybe approach photography a lot of times. It's like, as a conceptual artist, but again, it goes back to politics as well. I think that it's kind of hard to break conceptual. Anyone who's like invested in making art to some degree is a conceptual artist. There's no way you can simply blindly make something. Maybe, but I have hesitation to believe that.
Right. Well, thank you so much. It's been really informative and enlightening to speak with you. I do want to show our viewers your book again, Crushed Blacks. You can actually find the book at our gallery, BG Gallery. We're at Bergamot Station Arts Center. Ronnie, if you would like to tell them where else they can find the book, online maybe? Is there a way that our viewers can find Crushed Blacks online? If they can order it online?
Oh yes, you can go through nonlinearbooks.com.
Or you can also go
to Instagram and look for Nonlinear books, and there you'll see a link to go to the publisher's bookstore.
And we'll make
I'll send the link in a second.
We'll make sure to put the link there for you guys to find it easily. Again, Ronnie, we've really enjoyed having you from Tokyo, actually, which I think that whenever you're in the States, you have to come by. We'll have to do this in person.
Yeah, thank you.
I really appreciate it. I mean, sorry, it's kind of early in my brain. It's not
Fully like,
Oh, no, I totally understand. We've got a full.
I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely, we love having you. We've got a full program here today. We are doing the Melanin Deluxe remix edition, so we've got a lot of performers, and we've got more artist talks, and we've got so many other things to give to our viewers and to our many collectors. And so, sadly, we're going to conclude this, but I'm sure we'll pick back up again.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and stay tuned. We have more to offer today. Thank you guys.